Hey everybody, RetroPie Guy here. Today I'm going to do a demo and review of this 6-in-1 arcade stick that I purchased off of Amazon. So this isn't going to be a brand name that anybody really recognizes. This is a generic arcade stick, but it is high quality. Performance, everything about this does work really well. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you around this a little bit. We're going to jump in, take a look at all the functions, features, controls of this arcade stick. Then we're going to jump into RetroPie. I'm going to show you how to set this up and map it with RetroPie. Because the setup process is a little bit specific, not super straightforward, so I do want to definitely take some time to show you exactly how you want to go about setting this up and mapping it with RetroPie, so there's no confusion or anything like that. And then we'll jump into a handful of gameplay demos with this. I'll show you the performance and the quality of it, and then we'll circle back here and I'll talk to you a little bit more about what I liked and what I didn't like about this 6-in-1 arcade stick. All right, so taking a closer look at the 6-in-1 arcade stick here, you can see we have 8-button configuration here. Now the labeling is pretty much perfect over here from midway to the left-hand side. Everything about this is exactly where I would map the A, B, X, and Y button. Now over here isn't quite exactly how I like to map it. Now you could go along and map this, with the way that it's labeled on here, or you can do it the way I would do it, which is left shoulder would be here, right shoulder would be here, left trigger would be here, and right trigger would be here. That's just the way that I do it on the 8-button configuration. That's personal preference in a lot of ways, but I do find that that's the way that you typically would do that for a lot of the arcade games. So you could do it, again, whatever you want to do. It's your arcade stick in the end, so whatever configuration you're happy with is perfect. Now, the buttons here are a little bit smaller than that of a typical arcade button. Not that it's a problem in any way though. Really nice action on each of these. They function super well, so I am happy with the quality here. This is a really nice section here. It's actually really not much different. The texture is a little bit rougher here versus out here where it's much smoother, but it is nice to be able to rest your hand on something, and it's non-skid, non-slip surface here, so you're not kind of sliding around if you were to start getting a little sweaty or anything like that. So it does make for a nice little rest here to obviously hit all your buttons, because a lot of these arcade sticks don't actually have this space for you. A lot of them are square and you end up kind of hanging off the side like this, or being just overall pretty uncomfortable. Same over here. You don't have a little section like you do here, which you don't really need because you're up on the side of your hand for the most part, navigating through the joystick. So you don't need that non-slick, non-skid surface, though this texture here isn't much difference here. I think you could see from this angle in the video that there is a little bit more texture here than over here, but certainly not a problem in any way. I do like the fact that we have support for our palms or wrists, so we can easily play both of these. It is just super comfortable, really nice setup here. Down here we have our plus and minus, which for RetroPie, we actually utilize these as our start and our select, because these aren't actually recognized with RetroPie. So worth mentioning there. So you're not going to be utilizing all of these. You probably could, I think you can actually utilize turbo. So that one I think does recognize, but you wouldn't be able to use, the home button as start and the circle button as select. So you utilize these in place of that. So that's it in terms of the controls here. Everything's up here on this top, so nothing on the sides here, but I do want to show you the back real quick. On the backhand side here, we do have these 4 suction cups. They're pretty nice quality, especially for the price point here. So, you don't have to wet these to stick them down or anything like that. You can just flip them like I did. I'm on a wood surface here on my desk, so I just put them down, and just with, you don't even have to push them down, but just playing like this isn't going to really slide a whole lot. If you were to wet those, then you could definitely probably flip the whole desk and it would obviously hang upside down. Not that you need to do that, but I'm okay with just playing like this, and I've never had the issue of it, sliding. Here I'm actually pushing it pretty hard to get it to slide, but again, those are perfectly dried suction cups, so if you just put the slightest bit of moisture on them, they would definitely stick really nicely to any hard surface for the most part. So that's going to do it for this portion. Let's jump into mapping and setting this up with RetroPie. All right, so in order to set up this arcade stick with RetroPie, we first need to go into our main menu. So you're going to be using either a regular keyboard or your regular Gamepad controller that's already been configured with your system. So with that Gamepad controller or keyboard, navigate to your main menu. Once in the main menu, we're going to drop down to configure input and select that option. It's going to ask us, are you sure you want to configure input? We're going to go ahead and select yes. So now you can plug in the USB connection into your Raspberry Pi. Once you do, it'll come up like it does here on my screen where it says one gamepad detected, and you will have a blue LED light indicator right here lit up. So now we can go and hit any of these buttons on our arcade stick. It's going to populate the name in the bottom of this box on the screen and then immediately bring us into our mapping page. So now we're going to go through and start mapping this. Now there are a couple little hiccups along the way that I'm going to show you, but to get started here, we'll start with the D-pad. So for D-pad up, we're just going to push our joystick up. For D-pad down, we'll push it down. For D-pad left, we'll push it left. And D-pad right, we'll push it right. For the start button, I'm actually going to use the plus button here. For select, I'm going to do the minus. For A, I'm going to do A. For B, I'm going to do B. For X, I'm going to do X, and for Y, I'm going to do Y. Now for the shoulders here, you'll notice that the labeling up here has L and R right here. So technically your left shoulder would be this button, right shoulder would be that button. I'm not crazy about the way that this is actually labeled in regards to this section of these 4 buttons here. So I actually map this differently. That's how I do all of my 8-button configurations for arcade sticks. I just find that it works super well for gameplay. So this is the way I do it. You can keep it to, what these are set to here in terms of the labeling. You can, put them exactly the same way into your mapping here if you want, but this is the way that I do it. So for left shoulder, I actually do this top button, which is labeled R in this case. For right shoulder, I actually do the ZR as it's labeled here. And you'll notice that it says not defined there. So the reason for that is it just doesn't recognize this button for some reason. So we're just going to ignore it. We're going to keep going. I'll show you how to fix this later. So for the left trigger, we're going to go and hit this button up here, which is labeled L. And for right trigger, we're going to do this one right here, which is labeled ZL. And you notice that when I hit this one, just like on the other side, nothing happens. So I'm hitting it and it's just not recognizing here. So we're going to actually end up skipping this. So we can actually just go over to A, hold that down, and it's going to bypass that option. So I'll show you how to fix this in a moment, but as of right now, that's just the workaround we have to kind of deal with in this case. It just doesn't recognize those 2 functions here as we try to map them. So for the left thumb and right thumb and the analog sticks, we don't have those here because this is an arcade stick, so we're going to ignore those. We're just going to bypass them with the A button. So we're going to hold down A for each of these prompts, just bypassing everything here because they just don't apply to us with this specific arcade stick that we're setting up today. So we're going to go all the way down to the last option, which is the hotkey enable. And this is the button that you're going to assign as your hotkey enable, which is the button that you would hit if you were in a game and you want to exit that game and go back to your game collection menu. So we're going to give that to the minus button here, same as select. So the way this works is if you just hit the minus button, it'll be your select function. To enable the hotkey enable function here, you would hit minus with the plus here in order to exit games and go back to your game collection menu. So that's been set up. So to confirm all of these mappings, we're just going to hit A. It's going to load for a couple seconds. Once it brings us back to the main menu, we know that it's all set. So we'll hit B to back out. And we'll test this out with the joystick, and you can see that we are able to navigate through our different collections here. So everything's working good. So we do have to resolve the issues of our trigger functions there where they, just weren't mapping correctly. It's actually these 2 buttons. So it's the right shoulder and the right trigger, the way that we mapped it, if you followed it exactly here. If you did it differently, just remember it's whatever functions you assign to these 2 buttons here that are not recognized with RetroPie. So we actually need to go into RetroArch. So to do that, we're going to go into our configuration menu here. Usually this is going to be, depending on your image, it's going to be the collection that has either the Raspberry Pi or the RetroPie logo on it. In this case, we have both. So we'll select this and we're going to navigate down to RetroArch, which is about halfway down, I'd say. Right here, we'll select that with A. It'll load in for a couple seconds. All right, so we're going to hit the B button. That's going to enable us to go over to settings now. We're going to go down to input. We're going to select that with the A button. We're going to go down to port 1 binds. We'll select that with A. And now this is going to be another way that we can go in and do those mappings. So we're going to look for the ones that are missing. So you can see we have A here, we have X here. All of these have buttons assigned to the functions, but we do have here the right trigger, which is not assigned. You can see that there's 3 little dashes there next to that one. So we know that the right trigger has not been set up. So we're going to actually select that with A, and then we're going to assign it to the button. So you can see now that it does have a +2 there. So the button has been assigned to that one. So what was the other one that we didn't have? I believe it was the right shoulder, right? Yeah, right shoulder. So this one has a mapping there. It's actually just pulling off of my keyboard because I do have a keyboard plugged in. So we're going to just select this one. Again, the exact same way, hit the A button, and then we are going to assign it to the button that we want to assign to. So all of that is good. Now we can just run through all of these real quick here just to verify nothing is missing. You just want to make sure that they all say auto and then have that function next to them, except for the ones that we manually went in and did today, which is the right shoulder and right trigger. So we're good to go here. We're going to scroll all the way down. It'll loop us back to the top, and we are going to go over to save auto config. We're going to hit the A button to do that. We get a little confirmation in the bottom left corner there. So we can back out of this page. We're going to hit B to back out, B again, and we are going to go over to this first column here. We're going to go down to configuration file. We're going to select that with A, and we're going to hit save current configuration. So this is just saving everything that we've done again. So now we are good to exit this. We'll hit B to back out, and we'll go down to quit RetroArch. So we are good to go now at this point. So we can back out, we can test this out with a game. Now the 2 buttons that we had to manually go in and do, we're not going to be actually utilizing those a whole heck of a lot for most of the arcade style games. But if we were to jump into PlayStation, not that PlayStation is really a great collection to play with an arcade stick like this, but for certain titles it does work really nicely. Tekken 3 is one that I love playing with an arcade setup like this. But I'm going to go into Medal of Honor just because I want to test out those functions that we manually did. So I know that that game we use those a lot, so it'll be really easy for me to tell right off the bat whether those are working or not. So I just want to test those 100% here real quick. All right, so our right shoulder brings us to the right, so we do know that worked. So left shoulder and right shoulder are functioning perfectly. And you can see now that that does function excellent. We're able to hit that right trigger and be able to actually aim, which is perfect. So I've actually never played this with an arcade stick. I just wanted to test it out here. So I'm not sure I'll be... Nothing goes super well. Forget how to change my gun. There we go. So B would do it. Let's see. All right, so that works. Definitely functions well. I actually think you could play this pretty nicely on an arcade setup. It just takes getting used to figure out exactly what you need in terms of the controls here, but definitely does have a nice play to it as long as you can figure out exactly where all your functions are in here. On this particular layout, obviously it's quite different than playing on PlayStation controller, but does work really well. You definitely need the 8-button configuration, though. You definitely couldn't play it with 6 since you need these functions as well. So I'm going to jump out of this game, and let's jump into a couple other games real quick just to test out this controller. Let's try Tekken 3 while we're in PlayStation.
Round 1, fight.
let's go into a classic arcade game. All right, so check out Metal Slug 3. Select to put coins in, plus to start.
Mission 1, start!
All right, so you can see from those gameplay demos that this arcade stick actually performs super well. I'm really surprised because when I went and purchased this off of Amazon, it came in at that, like, I think it was $33, $34, something like that, which is just insanely inexpensive compared to those from 8BitDo or some of the other higher, more reputable brands out there. So, you know, at $35, I was expecting, quite honestly, it to come in and be trash. You know, I didn't have high hopes for this at all, but the performance on this is actually really, really surprisingly good. The buttons are a little bit smaller. You can see here, just looking at it, they're definitely, I don't want to say half the size of your standard arcade buttons, but maybe 3/4 of the size. So definitely, you know, a quarter smaller than those from 8BitDo or, again, any of those more expensive brands. So not an issue at all. You know, it's certainly, as long as it's not smaller than your fingertip, you're good to go on these, really. I do like the layout here. It is a big arcade stick, so it's not going to be something that you're traveling with. It's not going to be something that's super easy to, you know, take along with you or be portable. You could definitely play with it. It comes with pretty good length on the cable here. I actually didn't even take it out all the way, but you could definitely plug this into your Raspberry Pi, sit, you know, a few feet back away from your TV or your arcade setup and be able to play along. So that does give you a little bit of mobility to it, but you know, it's certainly not Bluetooth or wireless, so you do have to be, you know, within, I believe this is a 5-foot cable, so definitely gives you a little leeway, but not a, you know, you're not going to be in the kitchen playing on a screen that's in the living room by any means. Now, in terms of the texture here, this is actually, it's obviously made of plastic, but it's got this rubber sort of texture to it, which is nice. It's non-skid, non-slip, so you don't have to worry about sliding all over this when you're trying to play. You do have the suction cups in the back. They're high quality suction cups. A lot of these generic arcade sticks have trash suction cups. In one case, I had one, put it down. I don't even wet these when I put them down. You know, there's enough to just sit them down, and it gives you, you know, you don't have to stick it there and hang from them or anything. You just want to stick them down just with a little bit of pressure, and it's going to keep it from sliding all over your surface. One case, I put one down, picked it up after playing for maybe 15 minutes or so, and 3 of the 4 suction cups stood on my desk and ripped right out of here. So that's not the case here at all. It is really top quality in terms of the suction cups. You know, not to say that they're, you know, super expensive or anything, but they're high quality enough where they're not going to fall off or get damaged or anything like that for you. So I definitely like everything about this. Buttons, you know, they're not the highest quality plastic, but again, at that $34 price point, it's definitely far exceeding my expectations for them. So not too loose of a functionality here, not too tight. Definitely no binding or anything like that. You can see I played Metal Slug 3, which is a game where I think you are hitting that button, you know, an insane amount of times in order to fire throughout those levels, and I had no issues. Usually with these generic arcade sticks, when you get through like the first level of something like that where you're hitting the buttons excessively, you end up with some binds or sticks or anything like that. Didn't experience that at all. Nothing that even made me think that, you know, at some point down the road they would be problematic. So really love the buttons here. The joystick, you know, it's not going to be your top of the line, Sanwa joystick or anything like that. It's not really the quality that I use on my arcade cabinet here, but in terms of quality for a arcade stick like this, it's definitely top quality for generic versions. It's definitely better quality than that of like the stock ones that come on an arcade 1-up cabinet. So that'll give you some idea on how to gauge the quality level here. But the biggest takeaway is, for the price point of $34, it far exceeds my expectations. So definitely take that into consideration, because a lot of people aren't going to be playing this enough where they really want to invest in the 8-bit Doze arcade stick, which is upwards of $80, $85. I've even seen them up to $105, depending on how many of them they have available and if there's a shortage on them, because obviously supply and demand, the prices do kind of jack up a little bit on Amazon and places like that. So if you're not looking to spend that amount of money, then this is definitely a solid option for you. It really is. Performance is great, quality is great. I'm just really happy, really just blown away by the quality level at that $34 price point. So the only negative that I've come across so far on here is not all of the buttons here are recognized with RetroPie. We experienced that a little bit with the mapping process here, where the the way that I mapped it anyways, the shoulder for the right side and the trigger for the right side didn't actually map correctly, or at all really. Those buttons just didn't sync up with RetroPie system. So I showed you the mapping process. If you follow that tutorial portion of this video, you're going to be good to go. You just have to bypass the ones that don't work on there, then go into RetroArch and go in and map them that way. Once you save it from RetroArch, it'll go across all your different platforms and systems, and you'll be good to go. So it is a slight workaround, but in all honesty, it only adds maybe 2-3 minutes to your setup process for this. So it's not a huge deal. And again, for the money that you're going to be saving on getting this over an 8-bit Doze arcade stick, it's certainly worth the couple extra minutes it takes to set this up. So the other thing is, I use my start button as the plus button, select and hotkey as my minus. The reason for that is not all of these buttons down here actually work or are recognized with the system. So that's just one of those compatibility issues that you do get with something like this, which is recognized on a bunch of different platforms. You can use this with, I think the Nintendo Switch, you can use it with PlayStation 3, probably a couple different PlayStations, but I know PlayStation 3 for a fact. PC, just a bunch of stuff you can use this on. So with something like that that's not meant entirely just for one setup, you do have compatibility issues like that. But again, you have enough buttons on here where you can utilize that plus and minus as you start and select, so it's really not an issue at all. So anyways, at the end of the day, I would highly recommend this to anybody that's looking to not break the bank open and go out and buy the top of the line, most expensive arcade stick out there. This is a generic version, definitely worth the $34+ that it costs you off of Amazon. So I am going to supply you with a link in the description below. Just jump down there if you're interested in purchasing this. Click that link, it'll take you right over to Amazon. You'll be able to pick up one of these. If you have Amazon Prime, I think you can get these in like 1 or 2 days. I know that it only took me 1 day to get them. I do live pretty close to a sorting facility for Amazon though, so a day or 2 at the most with Amazon. So again, definitely don't hesitate if you're considering getting one of these. Go out and grab it. You definitely won't be disappointed. So that's going to do it for today. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button for me. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do a whole bunch of different videos based around retro gaming. We do product reviews like this one, tutorials, also like this one kind of was, gameplay demos, just a lot of great stuff on here in terms of gaming. And then check us out online on the website, www.retropieguy.com. Thanks for watching.